Not many people have the guts to admit it, but here's a truth that might even sound counterintuitive. God doesn't pick the ones who'll suffer less. He picks the ones who can endure more. And you know why? Because while most folks pray for an easy road, the chosen ones get missions way too big to fit inside comfort zones. Real spirituality isn't about dodging storms. It's about learning to walk on water with awareness and strength. Maybe you're sitting there, worn out, praying and asking, why me? But what if I told you your pain has a purpose? Every struggle is a divine code, a quiet preparation for something that'll impact not just your life, but generations to come. Joseph didn't get why he was thrown in prison until he became governor. David didn't understand his years on the run until he was crowned king. What looks like punishment is really a spiritual calling toward an eternal purpose. So before you start thinking you've been forgotten or punished, take a deep breath. What you're about to learn today isn't just another motivational speech. It's a revelation that'll flip your perspective upside down and give you some practical strategies to face any adversity with unshakable faith and a wisdom most people never find. Ready? Let's do this. Because your journey is just getting started. When Joseph was sold into slavery, thrown in jail and forgotten for years, it seemed like God had gone silent. But behind the scenes, he was building Joseph's faith, not just to survive the pain, but to handle the greatness of a purpose no one else could see yet. Just like an athlete going through brutal training for a championship that hasn't even started, you're being prepared too. Here's a practical tip. Instead of avoiding hard days, start a spiritual journal. Write down both the challenges and the small victories God has already given you. It'll feed your positivity and awareness every day. And another thing, adversity exposes the hidden idols of the heart. Sometimes, without realizing it, we start relying on our jobs, our health, or the people around us. When all that gets shaken, God shows us that only He is unshakable. Ever thought that the no you were so frustrated about was actually a yes to something bigger? Faith born in comfort is shallow, but faith forged in the fight, that's the kind of faith that moves mountains and opens doors no one can shut. And speaking of doors, just wait till you see how your struggles are actually prepping you for something way bigger. While some folks see trials as punishments, God uses them like spiritual gyms. Look at Joseph again. Every injustice he faced wasn't a setback, it was spiritual strength training. That young dreamer had to be shaped so that when he reached Egypt's throne, he had the strength, empathy, and awareness to lead an entire nation. Same goes for you. What feels like a delay today is actually tailor-made training. Picture a pilot. Before flying hundreds of people across the skies, they go through hours of crisis simulations. Why? Because when you carry a big purpose, you've got to be storm ready. God doesn't just want you to reach your destination. He wants you to arrive prepared. How about another practical tip? Every time you hit an obstacle, ask yourself, how is this preparing me for the future I've been praying for? Here's a detail most people overlook. Sometimes God closes doors not to punish you, but to stop you from walking into a mission you're not yet ready for. He doesn't want you crushed by the weight of your own calling. Speaking of calling, let's talk about what this process develops in you: character and empathy. Suffering has this wild way of shaping character. It strips away the masks, breaks down pride, and teaches us to really listen with our hearts. That's what happened to Job. After losing everything, he didn't just get back his possessions, he gained a more compassionate heart. When you walk through the valley, you start seeing other people's pain in ways you never could before. That's spiritual maturity. That's real awareness. Ever notice how the most inspiring people usually have scars? They don't talk about theories. They talk about real experiences. The Apostle Paul, who faced prison, shipwrecks, and persecution, became a mentor, not because of his titles, but because he truly understood and comforted those who were suffering. So if you're going through tough times, ask yourself, how can I use this experience to help others someday? That's how you turn pain into purpose. And there's a bonus. Empathy builds deeper connections. Your relationships stop being superficial and become spiritual. You stop judging and start understanding. And that's the kind of maturity that sets you up for the next level of growth, the kind that takes your spirituality and inner strength to heights few ever reach. Spiritual growth doesn't happen on calm days. It blooms in adversity. It was in the desert that the people of Israel learned to trust God daily. Every morning, when manna fell from the sky, their faith was tested. Hard times reveal our weaknesses, but they also show our potential. That's where God teaches us humility, self-control, and how to let go of what we don't need anymore. You know that sense of control we all love so much. Hardships show us it's an illusion, and when we finally let go, we learn to trust Jesus for real, not just with words, but with actions. Here's a practical tip. When you face a problem, instead of panicking, make it a habit to pray first and act second. That way, you'll train your awareness to seek spiritual solutions before human ones. And here's a secret few talk about. Spiritual maturity isn't about knowing a lot about God. It's about relying less on yourself and more on Him. Once that maturity sets in, you'll start feeling a peace that doesn't depend on your circumstances. And guess what usually comes with that? A deeper connection with God. When everything's going well, it's easy to keep a casual faith. But in the storms, prayer stops being a monologue and becomes a real conversation. In those vulnerable moments, God becomes more than just an idea or a doctrine. He becomes your constant companion. That's what happened to David, who learned to hear God's voice in the silence of the desert, a voice many in the palaces couldn't hear. If you feel like God's distant, here's something practical. Create a prayer corner in your house. Doesn't have to be fancy. A chair, a Bible, and a notebook are enough. Set a regular time for it. You'll be amazed how this simple habit will transform your spirituality and your daily strength. There's more. As you grow closer to God, you'll start spotting the hidden lessons in your hardships. You'll realize every battle has an eternal purpose. Which brings us to the next big lesson, contentment and understanding where your true home really is. A lot of people are chasing financial stability, perfect health, and flawless relationships. But here's the spiritual truth. Everything in this world is temporary. Paul, even in prison and facing hardship, said, "I've learned to be content in whatever situation I'm in." That kind of contentment doesn't come from what you have, but from who you know, God. Here's a challenge for you. Write down 5 things you're grateful for today, even in the middle of the struggles. This simple exercise will shift your focus from lack to abundance. And that positive awareness will change not just your mood, but also your daily actions and reactions. When you learn to live content, your life stops being a frantic chase for things and becomes a journey with eternal purpose. And that's when God starts using your battles for something even greater, breaking generational cycles. Sometimes the battles you're fighting aren't even about you. They're about breaking patterns in your family, addictions, emotional poverty, fear, lack of spirituality, cycles passed down for generations. But God raises people with awareness and strength to say, "This stops here." That's what He did with Gideon. The young guy hiding in a wine press became Israel's deliverer. God chose him not because he was strong, but because he was willing to change the story of his family line. And you can be that person too. Want a practical step? Identify negative patterns that keep repeating in your family and pray about them daily. And here's the beauty of it. When those cycles break, it's not just your life that improves. Future generations reap the benefits. And when that transformation happens, it becomes something everyone notices, a visible manifestation of God's glory. When someone overcomes what seemed impossible, people can't help but notice. It's like God's glory shines through their life story. Joseph, David, Esther, they all became living proof that real spirituality and the strength that comes from God can make the impossible happen. And maybe you can't see it yet, but your story's being written with the same purpose. Every trial you overcome turns you into an example of positivity and unshakable faith for those watching you. And that's not pride, that's a mission. It's being a light in the darkness of this world. And that light doesn't stop there. It also prepares you to handle future challenges with a faith that won't waver. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next: resilience. Resilience doesn't grow in comfort. It's built on battlefields. Every no you've heard, every closed door, every prayer that seemed unanswered, all of it has strengthened your faith layer by layer. Like a tree that grows deep roots during storms, you're growing strong spiritual roots. People who faced hardships and kept their spirituality and awareness positive become almost unshakable. Take Corrie ten Boom, for example. She survived the horrors of a Nazi concentration camp and still said, "Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God." And here's the amazing part. Resilience isn't just for surviving. It turns you into someone who can help others weather their own storms. That's how your personal transformation becomes not just a blessing for yourself, but a legacy for many. The journey through suffering isn't wasted. Every experience shapes skills, virtues, and understanding that few possess. God turns your pain into a tool, your weakness into strength, your confusion into clear spiritual awareness. What feels like a burden today will become a bridge for others tomorrow. Here's a practical idea. Start recording the lessons you've learned in life. You can keep a journal or even create content on social media. There are so many people who need exactly what you've already learned through experience. You have no idea how many lives your story could impact. And here's what's even more powerful. Your legacy doesn't end when you leave this life. It echoes, it inspires, it points to Jesus and proves that with God, even the biggest storms can become eternal testimonies. And speaking of eternity, it's time to understand why God allows all this to happen. Now that you get why God lets the chosen ones face hard times, the big question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you keep seeing challenges as punishments, or will you start recognizing them as invitations to a greater purpose? Remember, while many run from battles, those with spiritual awareness know every struggle carries a hidden lesson. So how about taking the first practical step today? Reflect. What recent difficulties might be shaping your faith, building your character, or even preparing you to break old cycles? Ever thought about turning your pain into a testimony? Write down your experiences, pray with purpose, and if you can, share them with someone going through similar struggles. God didn't choose you just to survive. He chose you to inspire others. And if this message spoke to your soul, I invite you, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and join us on this journey of spiritual growth and awareness. Here, you won't just hear about faith. You'll learn how to live it in a way that transforms lives, starting with your own. Let's walk this path together,